Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring recipes out of the past and back into the kitchen. Today we'll be sharing with you a 1914 recipe for Sledmere Gingerbread, a bouncy ginger cake that, according to this recipe, is excellent for children. We found this recipe in our copy of a second Dudley book of recipes, a book of recipes collected and arranged by Georgina Ward, the Countess of Dudley, and here's a photo of her at the beginning of the book. This was published in 1914, and the Countess explains in the introduction that the recipes in the book are not meant to be anything fancy, just good old everyday recipes for any sort of family. We'll have to do a video just showing off this book and telling you a bit more about the Countess herself, but turning back to the recipe, to make it you will need the following ingredients. 454 grams of plain flour, 227 grams of caster sugar, 14 grams of ground ginger, 1 teaspoonful of baking soda, 227 grams of golden syrup or treacle, we've used golden syrup, 4 eggs, and 227 grams of butter. The first thing to do is to melt your butter, sugar and golden syrup or treacle together over a low heat and stir these together until they're all combined. We're starting with the butter here, and while this melts and we work in the sugar and golden syrup, I'll tell you a bit more about this recipe. So there are so many different types of gingerbread. Gingerbread biscuits and cookies, gingerbread that's more of a cake or bread, and gingerbread that's a hybrid of the two, like the famous Grasmere gingerbread, which we have a Victorian recipe for and might try at some point. The gingerbread we're making today is more of a soft cake, but along with these different types of gingerbread, there are also so many different local recipes for it across the world, I'd imagine. And this recipe is for Sledmere gingerbread, so we must assume it's a recipe that's local to the village of Sledmere in East Riding, Yorkshire, which is in northern England. And as we mentioned, we're using golden syrup here rather than treacle. The recipe says to use golden syrup in the ingredients list, which is why we're using it, but later in the method says add the treacle, not syrup. We reckon that this was just a mistake. You find a lot of mistakes in these old books, and the Countess probably meant golden syrup because it was listed as an actual ingredient, but you can really use either of them. If you use treacle, you'll end up with a slightly softer and stickier cake, and with golden syrup you'll end up with a cake that's lighter on the inside and a bit more spongy. So that's our butter, sugar and golden syrup together in a pan over a low heat, and we're just going to stir these together until they're all combined. Next, crack your 4 eggs into a bowl and then, as the Countess says, beat them up. The recipe finishes with a note saying this recipe is excellent for children, so that must be who our Countess mainly intended it for. She had 6 children of her own, all grown up by 1914, including her youngest son, who sadly died in the same year in battle, and also from what we could find, at this time she also had at least 13 grandchildren between the ages of 22 and 0, so we can only assume this lady knew what she was talking about when it came to children and the sorts of cakes they liked, because she would have always had kids around her. And once you've beaten up your eggs, pour in your butter mixture and then stir this all together. And now we're going to move on to the remaining dry ingredients. So switch to quite a large bowl and sift in your plain flour. Then sift in the ground ginger. And finally, the baking soda. Mix these all together quickly until they're all combined before pouring your butter mixture in. And then stir this all together. You'll find it turning into quite a stiff, sticky cake batter. You'll then need quite a deep tray bake tin that's about 9 by 9 inches that's been buttered and coated with baking paper, and just pour the mixture into this. Even the mixture out as well as you can in the tin, and then bake in a preheated oven set at 180 degrees Celsius until the cake becomes a golden brown and is cooked all the way through. The recipe says to leave it in the oven for about 45 minutes, which we stuck to as the inside was taking a while to cook through. Leave your gingerbread to cool down completely before removing from the tin and slicing up into either rectangles or squares. And there they are, beautiful bouncy slabs of 1914 Sledmere gingerbread that go so well with a cup of tea. And you can enjoy this just as well heated up. The day after baking we put some in the microwave for about half a minute and poured over some maple syrup and added a dollop of whipped cream, which was also delicious. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave us a like, and if you'd like to see us recreate more antique recipes, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You can also find full instructions for this recipe and many more on our website, linked in the description box below.